Okay, it looks like we can hear. Uh, what I'd like to do is I like to have a fair amount of interaction. It's going to be interesting to see how it goes with the. I haven't done one of these over Zoom, so it will be interesting. But I'm not particularly parochial on what I do and where I go. Some photographers are, you know, they like to keep the secret places secret. I'm not so much. I'm not really into the secret places secret. If you want to ask a question, ask a question. Uh, kind of do the raise your hand or whatever, so Shirley knows, and I'll try and stop periodically. If I don't, Shirley, unmute yourself and say something. Okay. Excellent. I'm going to start out a little bit about kind of where I started photography, what what my philosophy is, and it'll wander into window photography techniques, and then I'd like to I'll show some places that I like, and my goal is to make everybody kind of want to go there and take some pictures. If that's okay. That work for people?
Yeah.
Okay. Whoa. Okay, I have lost.
What have you lost, Scott?
Oh, I have. I used to have a grid of everybody up here, and it just disappeared on me.
Oh, okay.
You're saying I
We're,
made it
we're
is.
still seeing your screen. A lot of people have turned off their video, so
Okay, so we'll just go.
just
I
go.
rely on you to kind of keep things straight from that side, and I will just go. Oh,
Will
I'm now
do.
back. Okay. Um, so as I said, I'll go through that part of it. I got active in. I've taken pictures for a long time. You know, snapshots. Well, we'll go on vacation, take pictures, take pretty pictures of places I've been, capture memories. But about when the 5D came out, the Canon 5D, I uh, I saw that and got the 24 to 105 L glass on it, and all of a sudden realized I had a camera. And then I bought a 5D Mark II and a 5D Mark III and a 5D SR and a 5D Mark IV, and and a bunch of glass. And the field of photography just really opened up for me. Had a lot of fun with it. And then along the way, Sony came out with its cameras with a better noise figure, and now I have a Sony A7R3, A7R4, and a bunch of glass on that. So it's I'm one of these guys that I guess belongs to Photographers Anonymous. Hello, my name is Scott. It's been 3 days since I bought my last piece of photography stuff. You know how that goes. The but I have a question. I think maybe I have a question. We're gonna do it this way. Okay, Ansel Adams. I saw these two photographs of Ansel Adams, and I realized that taking, you know, kind of the snapshots I'd taken was, while interesting, was not. There was something different, and I realized what it was. Is those pictures were compelling. They made me want to stand there on Snake River Overlook and take that picture, or go down and the moon over Half Dome. It was just, there was something visceral about it that was different than I had before, and it caused me to have a different outlook on it. All of a sudden, I wanted to take pictures. It was almost a cathartic event. I went from just taking pictures of things as they happen to want to make other people want to stand where I was taking and be at that place and feel what I felt. So that became one of the driving forces of the pictures that I took. It was primarily that, trying to communicate what I felt of these great places to other people. Is this what okay, okay, the components of shots. Vision photographer, right? What are you trying to do? And we tend to all develop almost a personality with our pictures. A lot of people, you can look at their pic after you get to know a person in photography, you can look at it and say, oh, that's his picture, that's her picture, that's somebody else's picture, right? And the composition of what we have to shoot, the environment that it's in, the light. You know, probably the least important thing is the skilled photographer, i.e. the camera and post-processing, is still critically important. But it's this vision of what's going to happen. What do you want to do with it? That's really important, because that drives you to develop whatever skills you need. And the camera, you need to take it and drive the philosophy of where you're going. Okay, how many people have seen this picture before?
I think quite a few of us have.
I think so. Now, everybody that's seen it, I don't want an answer to this question, but for somebody that hasn't, critique this picture. Somebody volunteer.
Anybody want to unmute themselves and critique that picture?
Okay, I'll dive. I'm sorry about this V8 back here. It was left over from a previous Zoom meeting. And
Hey, I like it.
We like it.
I forgot how to get rid of it. So, you know, I should have Canon gear or Fuji. Anyway, the picture really is pretty flat. The lighting's not that interesting. And the composition's a little weak. But other than that,
Other than that, it's pretty good, huh?
yeah, but what you got to, you know, I of course Adams shot something very similar, but this may well be his original negative, and then through the magic of the dark room, you know, he made it better.
Well, guess what? You were right. That is the negative.
Yep.
So this is Moon over Hernandez, New Mexico.
Yep.
Some people argue this is his best shot that he took. He showed up, drove around the corner, saw this thing, didn't have his light meter, remembered the exposure of the moon, set up the picture, and took it. Now, Ansel Adams was kind of a different character, and he how many of you knew that there was a time in his life that he had to make a decision? Was he going to be a concert pianist or a photographer?
Yep.
Yeah, that's really true. He had to make a decision. He decided that he would be a photographer. And but you can see his music background plays in here. He said a good negative is comparable to a composer's score, i.e., you know, you pick up something by Brahms or whoever, Beethoven, and that's what the negative is. And the performance is the print. And he says, and each performance differs in subtle ways, just like music. In fact, he used to score his pictures when he would work on it. He'd do his various dodging and burning steps He had a metronome, and the metronome would tick, 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 tick. And so many beats for this one, so many beats for the next one, so many beats for the next one. And he'd score 20 or 30 steps in printing this thing that would follow that score to the beat of the metronome. And that's what allowed him to get good. It's kind of a rough way to do Photoshop, but that's exactly what he was doing. And so does this picture on the right look, that look familiar?
Yeah.
It's a little more snappy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where he went. And I remember when I first got into photography and with Photoshop, there were a lot of people who were really what? Anti-Photoshop. If the camera didn't take it, it wasn't real. Does that make sense?
Still does.
I bought into the camera has to capture the information, but that you have to make, but for the kind of photography I like to do, you have to make the picture. You're only half done when you take it. You've got the raw components, but you have to take the picture. You have to make it into what it's going to basically become. Ansel Adams took some pictures in Zion. He was contracted to go around and take pictures of all the national parks. He was supposedly, I understand he took 7. I wasn't able to find all 7. But I found these, this set and this one. And I thought, and somehow it seemed like he left his A game at home. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes,
It's
it
like
does.
he took the pictures.
Yeah.
But he left his A game at home.
These are documentary photographs, meaning if you were standing next to the photographer when he shot it, this is what you would have seen. But Adams excelled at the interpretive photograph, where he brought out something, somehow something was added in the process of being photographed, so that even if you were standing next to him when he shot it, you would look at that photograph and say, wow, I never saw that. And these are, yeah, commission work. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
and
documentary.
well, the thing that I found interesting is a picture from Snake River Overlook was much the same thing, right? Happened in the same sequence. But some of the stuff he actually did, he actually took in a piece of art, and others he was very much a documentary photograph. He took some things that were representative of the country.
Yeah, here's what it looked like.
Well, but he didn't even But the one thing that I found disappointing is not necessarily the post process, but boy, it was fundamentally just recording. There was no the composition wasn't even that great. This one was the best. Can you see my mouse?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. But one of the things it did is that, okay, what would it caused me to go back and think about it. This is about a year ago. I said, well, I'm going to take a couple of days. I'm just going to go and take some pictures and do it the way I want to do it up there. And it was in the middle of the winter. And so I thought I'd give myself the task. Create an image that inspire others to want to be there. And so this next little series kind of looked at it documented kind of how I wanted to go from just the interpretive photograph, the newspaper or the newspaper type of photography to creating art. And that's really what the difference is. You take it right as it comes out of the camera, flat, pretty flat. It really is documentary photography. So how many people recognize this? Okay, know where it's taken? Anybody not know where it's taken? that's Court of the Patriarchs. And there's a little road that goes down by the stables and out the back. And if you walk down the end, there's this little waterfall down there. Fun place to play. There's a bridge that goes across it. You can walk up this canyon, and there's lots of fun stuff up there. People recognize these places? If you look at it, you can see the snow in this one falling.
Mm-hmm.
I took it in the snow. This picture of the Great White Throne. I love winter. It's snow. Well, I like weather. If it's weather, I like to go shoot. To me, it adds a sense of mystery and grandeur. The photographs they're just special. Okay, this is right at the mouth of the Virgin River.
Yep.
This one is the parking lot up there at the end of the road up at Sinawaba. Anybody recognize this place?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Where at?
Down on the Perouse Trail, isn't it? Is that the
Close.
western?
Yeah, you go down the Perouse Trail about where you're about right across with the Natural History Center, and then you go down the side of the river a ways, and you got that. This tree, these two trees, I thought were just fantastic. And then this guy. Everybody recognize where this was taken?
Court
This
of
is,
Patriarchs?
yeah, it's the Court of the Patriarchs. And you go up and there's a little view area up there, but the trees have grown up and so you can't really get this shot. But if rather than going up the Court of the Patriarchs, you go down about 60, 70 feet and go up on the side hill up there, and then you can get this view.
Very nice.
So for winter photography, how many people have done much? It's hard to tell. There's no
much.
Not much. So one of the things that's really is managing light. Snow is very bright. Blown out snow looks as bad as blown out clouds. So I don't know if you can see it on your screens, but can you see even here where it's white, you can see texture in the snow. I don't know, do you have enough resolution you can see it? Nod yes or no?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Then all the way across here. So it becomes good. Dealing with light's a big deal. The other thing is dealing with cold. And keeping your camera actually functioning reasonably well. Because if you take it out and get a cold and then take it back in your car, you're going to get condensation on it and then you're done for the day. So how do you deal with that? You be fast when you go and take your pictures, but more importantly, when you come back in, you can have your camera out a long time. Wrap it in a towel, and that will keep the moisture, will condense on the towel rather than on and it will shield your camera from condensation. This is right. The exposure is right. You can see texture all the way back up through here, gradations in the snow. Back up here, two things are wrong with this picture. There's no gradation here, and it's got a color cast to it. And so that's the other thing that snow can do. The snow can fool you as to where your color temperature is. You can see a little bit down here. It doesn't come out as well in this sunken slide, but there's pink out in here also. If you look at this one versus this one, you can see the difference. So this is one of the things I like about it. It's spectacular. It's different. There are opportunities for moody pictures, as you saw in the ones down at in the park with the snow on it. They can get really moody and really intense emotionally. Snow-covered mountains can look wonderful. So especially a little north here, we start to get inversions. And this picture was taken in Idaho, where I lived before I came down here. And there is a lot of inversion up there. And this looks like a nice, really out of the way place. It's right out behind the gas station. How's that? Had to go a long ways for that picture. So since it's usually darker, tripods are important. Same with using RAW. All the good stuff you learned in normal summer photography, use here too. But it creates a mood that is just really hard to. It's really I guess not hard. It's just special. And without the color in it, and you'll see, and there's a couple of other pictures here. Winter photography, especially in cloudy, foggy, it tends to be very subdued, almost black and white. This one is black and white. You get up in the hoarfrost, and I don't think we have any of that down here in the valley, but you get up in, you go farther north, and there'll be a lot of it. And this stuff in this picture, it's 1/2 inch long. Fun to shoot. A close-up of it. And this is on some red willows, and look at the fun that it brings to that shot, at least in my mind. There's my view of moon over Half Dome in the middle. I was down there in February. I'd gone down to shoot down in Yosemite in February, and the moon was right, and I couldn't resist. But you can see in this moon. This one I haven't adjusted for and tried to pull it out. I wanted to show the difference in what the snow does. Now this snow is not burned out. And look how dark the moon is. And it's illuminated by the sun. And this is just reflecting almost everything it hits rather than the neutral that is reflected by the moon. And I don't know and on this end one, if you look at it closely, you can see the snow crinkles in the snow. So when you do it, shoot for the highlights, let everything else travel. Don't just make sure that you don't blow it out. And sometimes a really good place to use HDR. You see the difference in these two pictures. Look at the texture on this one on the right and the histogram. There's a little bit of specular highlight, which is that red spike right at the end, but not much. And that specular highlight will come out of these places that little pieces of ice that the sun is reflecting off from. But over here, you can see the histogram is pushed a lot more to the right. And there's detail lost on here. There's detail lost up here and on here. And to me, a much different quality of picture between the two. And you can't get this back. Once it's pushed up against the stop, you don't get much back. And well-balanced color. So the snow is white. The ice has the blue tint to it. It's another hard thing to do. It's in the shade, so it's picking up a lot of the blue from the sky, plus there's just the blue in the ice itself. And you get up in the glaciers and some of those, that snow is really blue. There's a lot of blue in it. So if you notice on here, saturation isn't driven up. His pants are pretty natural. Olive, the yellow on his boot. And you can look at the ice and the snow. And it's just, that's what you want to get. Back a little bit on this one, side light with the shadow brings out the texture of the snow. And consider black and white. A lot of what I've shown is black and white. But you can put in a red filter, either in Lightroom or Photoshop, and bring out the dark of the sky and the light of the clouds. And it can make some really dramatic shots. I mentioned earlier that in these foggy environments, they become almost black and white. This is a color picture. You can see a little hint of red in the house, a little bit of green in the tree. But this is the color. So don't be surprised that it's there. You don't try and bring it out too much because then it looks funky. But if you look at it, it looks like that. And that's what you want to, I think, strive for. This guy, now this is up near McCall, Idaho. These three shots. And these are old cottonwood trees. You can get something like this sometimes up in the park up here, but not very often. We just aren't cold enough. But I love this stuff. Take it with the sun behind you, and it just shoots to life. Any questions?
Was that last shot of the snow on the mountainside yours, Scott?
Everything is mine except for the ones I showed you, the Ransel Adams.
That's a very nice picture. I like that.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
As you have so succinctly talked about light and shadows and trying to balance bright snow and darker other aspects of a composition, tell us what your personal preference is for editing programs. A lot of editing programs, different things. I use about 3 or 4 different ones for different things. But what editing program do you use is your go-to when you're wanting to balance your light?
Good question. I started out and it was Photoshop. Then I added in the Nick set of stuff. And I've added in a couple of others, but it was primarily that. Lightroom came out, and after about, probably about third release of Lightroom, I started managing my photos in there, doing the first of the light management. And over time, as Lightroom has improved, I probably do 80% of my stuff in Lightroom.
So do you do anything with luminosity masks, or is that not necessary anymore? I found, like you're saying, unless it's something really drastic, oftentimes I'm happy with the sliders in Lightroom or in Photoshop Raw.
Well, and in Lightroom too, they go down to, they have in the paintbrush and the graduated filter and a couple of others, they have basically a luminosity mask where you can select the range of the color that you want to work with. And then you use your mask on top of it. And I found that that's really took me a long ways. I've used luminosity masks some, and I was going down that route until they put in, and I still have used it occasionally, but since they put that capability in Lightroom, I very seldom go there. The other thing I tend to do, if it's really complex, I'll do different layers of the picture in Photoshop and work on each of the areas separately in Photoshop and then merge them back together again.
Yeah, you know, one thing I do with that, I don't, maybe this is not necessary anymore, but it's just so much habit now, is I always set my camera to take 3 exposures of the same, you know, if I've got it on a tripod, even if I don't have it on a tripod, the cameras are so good now that I always take 3 separate, you know, what the camera wants to do, and then I bracket high and one higher and one lower. And then if I ever get into a situation where I can't adjust with one photo, then I will basically do my own HD, you know, put them together and use the exposure for the sky from one shot and the exposure for, you know, the land for another shot.
Yeah, I do much the same. Sometimes I'll just put on a straight bracket of 3 or 5, 1 dB off. Especially if I want to do a panorama, HDR panorama, then I found that the Lightroom and Photoshop don't know how to do an 8P panorama on just 2 shots. I have to set up the brackets correctly and do manual exposure, and then I'll really do it right. But yeah, what you're describing is, I agree with.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Would you go back to where you talked about getting condensation on your camera? And I have not gone out into much snow, but I mean, I'm getting out of a warm car going out into a cold environment, but it'll get condensation almost immediately, won't it?
Well, getting out of the car is not the problem. Getting back into the car is because your camera gets cold and then stuff condenses on it. So if you immediately wrap it back up, the water will it'll first hit the camera, and right at that interface between your towel and your camera, that'll form, but the towel will wick it up. And then you can get out again because the camera will still be warmer than the outside environment. And you can go and take your picture, just come back and wrap it up. Now, if the air is really dry, like it is in a lot of southern Utah, you're not going to have a lot of condensation. There are places like on the coast where you can get a bunch of condensation.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
In talking about your camera and condensation and stuff, I've heard other people say they use like a big plastic bag, like a Ziploc or something, kind of the same way you're using a towel. Have you ever tried that? Did one way work better than the other?
If I'm bringing it back in and it's going to be there a long time, I'll use a plastic bag. But if it's just like in and out, like when I went to Yellowstone, you know, you got in the heated bus and you're driving down the road, and you could be out every couple of minutes. And so I just bring it back in and wrap it and hold it there till I got back out again, and it worked fine.
Okay, thanks.
I've got a large cooler that I just plug into the old, what used to be the cigarette lighter in the truck. Assuming there's nothing else in that cooler, could you use that as a substitute?
Yeah, what I would do if I used a cooler, I'd still have the towel in the cooler. I'd set the camera inside it, put the camera over the top. But anything you can do to keep the camera at a fairly constant temperature is good.
Okay, thank you.
This is a sunrise over a river. There's something magic about snow and sunrises in my mind. I don't know what it is, but I find them magical. So I had to share this one.
I've got something else to share too.
Yeah.
Here's a print.
I like that.
Look familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that yours?
Yes, it is.
Excellent.
Yep.
This is Shirley. I'm going to break in here for a second. People are probably wondering who John is. John is
Who is
actually,
this guy?
yeah, who is this guy? John is actually going to be our speaker at our next club meeting about Route 66. And he and I were communicating back and forth today. So I said, hey, why don't you join us for winter photography? Because probably out of all of us except for Lynn, he actually lives in Michigan, so he has snow.
We do have some snow.
Yeah.
A lot.
So
Point
that
of information, Madam Chairman, I don't live in Michigan. I live in British Columbia.
no, you live in Michigan, John, or you live in British Columbia. John lives in Michigan.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Carry on.
Okay. Now the next thing I wanted to do is just go through some places that I find just fun. Okay, so again, ask questions. You can ask questions about any of the shots you want, but this is the point where I'm, you know how addicts are. They're trying to get other people to become addicts also. If I have to go to Photographers Anonymous, you guys need to go to Photographers Anonymous. You know what I mean?
I do.
So I've gone up a number of times to Jackson Hole, and I've gone on in Yellowstone and taken the snow coaches a couple of times. Always fun. This picture is taken at the top of the dam on Jackson Lake, and I always like getting that range. Part of it is that a number of years ago, I climbed, that's the Grand, I climbed to the top of the Grand at 13,500 feet, which was way fun. I don't know, I thought it had to be way crazy to do it, but I got talked into it, and at the end, I was glad I did it. So this is a multi-shot panorama. It's about 27,000 pixels wide in real life. And turn around looking the other way towards Oxbow Bend. Oxbow Bend is down about by the end of this mountain right here. Looking at sunrise the same day. So,
Scott,
yeah.
this is Pamela Palmer. Hello.
Hi,
I
Pam.
have a terrible time shooting sunrises like this. When I meter for the sky and I get that all right, the whole bottom just drops away completely. So is that where you would use in Lightroom the graduated neutral density and just pull up the bottom, or do you shoot a couple different shots and do an HDR?
I'll shoot for the sky and I'll shoot another shot for the bottom, and I'll put them together typically.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll do HDR. Sometimes I'll adjust it just with the sliders. But I'll often something like this. This is actually an HDR, a 5-shot HDR, 1.5 f-stop bracket, 5-shot.
Okay.
That makes sense?
It does.
Any other questions on that? This is Grand Prismatic Spring. With the clouds coming up and the water at the bottom. The one over here, this is Yellowstone, 4 buffalo out here walking across. There's hot water under here that's melted through the snow. Just a fun place to shoot. Now, this is a color shot, not a black and white. It may look black and white, but it's color. Look down here and you see a little green in places. It's color. Shooting through the fog of, that's Old Faithful. Most people, the benches are up here. But I said, you know, the problem with shooting that is there's some clouds up there. On the other side, it just all turns white and you lose definition of all this magic stuff that's happening. So I went on the far side, so the sun was shining back through it and shot it from the back. This one, the sun is shooting, I'm shooting, the sun is, in fact, if you look right here, there's a little round ball. That's the sun. These aren't stars, they're probably, oh, they're frost flakes. Air's cold enough, this steam is condensing and falling out a little bit of stuff. This is on the way to Yellowstone Basin, right up there where Old Faithful Lodge and that area is. It's a couple of miles before it. You can't remember the basin's name. And then people go up for the animals. The animals live in the water. They're near it a lot.
That's an amazing picture.
Oh, thank you.
I love that.
That's fantastic.
Well, thank you. The thing that, you know, one of the things that's just really interesting is getting your color balance right, the exposure right. But when it all happens, it comes out really nice.
Yeah, you've got such beautiful texture in the buffalo's fur.
And look how healthy they look. Isn't it wonderful?
Beefy.
Yeah.
Scott, I got a question. When you're shooting like this, are you in manual and making all the adjustments, or what are your basic settings that you start with? Are you an aperture priority kind of guy, or?
Well, okay, it depends. I really am. It depends.
Yeah.
Movement, I'll use shutter priority. Almost always. And if it's and I'll use aperture priority for most landscape shots that don't have movement. And sometimes with movement, I'll do manual and let ISO run.
Okay.
And the reason I do this is sometimes it moves pretty fast, and I don't have time to adjust the camera, and it does usually pretty good. And a little bit of bracketing, as Karen said, goes a long ways if you're in a time like this.
Yes, it does. Okay.
Make sense?
Yes, it does.
Some things like, but then there's a whole class of stuff that's just totally manual. Excuse me a second. I think I got it turned off. This white on white, I'm having a hard time seeing the make it go button. Okay, there it is. This is interesting. We came out and this guy was laying down here. He's obviously in trouble. Coyote coming up. You know, he's what? He's about a little over one coyote length away from him. He might have dinner. The guy raises up. Coyote decides he's not good dinner. He goes and walks around him and goes on. My understanding is from a lady that worked for the Forest Service for most of her career, is that this is what happens to most animals. Is their teeth go and then they starve. Not a good way to go. Life's not always kind. The guy that was the bus driver that was driving, it talked about there's a big old, he said there's a herd of well, he thought the buffalo were he's having a hard time with buffalo and wolves. And he said there's a big old buffalo that this herd of wolves, or this band of wolves took after and brought down. There are 18 wolves who attacked the buffalo. And he said by the day after, by not the next morning, but the morning after that, by that time, 12 of the wolves were dead. They'd been wounded so bad taking down the buffalo. They got the buffalo, but they lost 2/3 of the pack. That's an interesting statistic, isn't it?
Yeah.
But Yellowstone's a great place to take pictures of critters. If you're a critter person, you know, that's a place to be. Look at this. Guy's lost a bunch of hair on the side of his leg and it's black. Take a trip to the coast. Columbia River Gorge. You guys, everybody recognize Multnomah Falls?
Yep.
I found some interesting things I hadn't expected. Newport Beach Harbor. Fun to go down there at night and shoot the ships. Lights were wonderful. The marine layer is not as intense as it is in the summer, which is that layer of fog that lives out about this high. So you get a much different set of sunsets. Yosemite. I went down to Yosemite. These pictures were taken, I don't know. These were on 5D Mark II. You know, such an interesting place to shoot. And I went down there because of the fire falls. This is about a 2-week period of time in about the 2nd and 3rd week of February, when the sun is in exactly the right position. It comes between two cliffs and at sunset, it will light up. It will light up this falls with the face of El Capitan with orange light, making it look like it's pouring molten steel over the top. Really fun. This is what it looks like the sunset a month later when it doesn't come through the same slot at the same level. It's shaded by the time it gets that low.
Side note on that, Scott. We're all probably old enough, but my family, as I was growing up, spent 2 weeks in Yosemite every summer. I'm wondering if anybody actually saw the real firefall.
Oh, the one where they rolled the logs over the
literally
side.
fire. It was the most magical thing ever. If anybody's ever seen that, every night they would, all day long, they would build a mountain full of timbers and they would be smoldering up on Glacier Point. We'd go up there every so often during the day and watch this whole mountain full of timber, full of smoldering timbers. And then late at night, as at the camp show at Camp Curry, they would have a special time where they would have a regular routine where they would yell up from Camp Curry up to Glacier Point and say hello. And then one of them would say, let the fire fall. And then they would play Indian, everybody was just quiet, no noise. And they would play Indian Love Call, which is an old love song, an old Indian love song. And they would slowly bulldoze that off of the cliff. And it looks like it was going to come right down on you because you're looking right up at it. And the embers, if the wind was blowing, the embers would flow to the side. It was really a magical thing. And this
I've heard
reminds
about
me of
that.
that.
I've never seen it. I've heard about it. That'd be just,
It was
just-
awesome,
that'd
but
be a
I
wonderful thing
guess,
to see.
I guess not environmentally friendly.
Yeah, they're too proper these days. You don't get to do those kinds of things.
Yeah,
So they don't do that anymore.
no, they stopped it a long time ago. Too bad.
But this is not bad. This is a fun thing to do. And it is a magic place to shoot. And this time of year is the February timeframe is a great time to do it because at least in past years, they haven't shut it down. So you can still drive around in your car and you can stop where you want and stay as long as you want. And so if you get an opportunity, a fun place to go play. Death Valley in February. This is the beginning of a super bloom. This guy's a sunrise and that's a sunset. Nice desert sunsets. And it is warm enough that you can just really enjoy it. Going out on the salt flats and shooting the stars. This is the glow from Los Angeles.
Wow.
And this is the glow from Las Vegas. Kind of amazing how much light there is out there, isn't it? This is the backside of the Milky Way. When I say the backside, there's, we're in the middle of this disk, and in the summertime, in the summertime, you see the front side that has the center, the galactic center in it. In the winter, you see the back half, which it still has a lot of stars in it, but it doesn't have the galactic center. And then there's out to the racetrack. It's called the racetrack because these rocks, see these two moving together, and they're moving in a similar path, but they're separated. Now they figured out how that happens. Anybody want to say how?
Well, in the winter, that all those moisture that's drained off the mountains around at the end of the valley, all those that moisture freezes, and basically sort of in a semi-thawing state. That's when those rocks start to move. There's probably less than an inch difference in elevation from one end of that playa to the other, but it's just enough with that ice just to allow those to remove the friction.
Yeah.
You'll never watch it.
Yeah, it's what, the way they figured it out, because that was for years. I remember first hearing about it in 7th grade, that there was a place out there where the rocks moved. And it was about 6 years ago, I think, that they finally figured out what was happening, because they couldn't figure it out. And they took a rock out there and they drilled a hole in it, put a GPS in it.
Huh.
And as soon as it started to move, the GPS on the radio, as soon as it started to move, they got in a helicopter to fly out to see what was happening. And the wind was blowing, and there's enough force on that ice sheet, it was pushing the ice sheet and taking the rock with it. And as the ice sheet would bend and twist, it would make all of these funny marks. But yeah, it's flat to within 1 to 2 inches from one side of that thing to the other. It's incredibly flat. There is a problem though now. A lot of tourists are, especially ones from the Orient, think there's some mystic power associated with these, and they're hauling them away. And so the Forest Service comes out and or the Park Service comes out and puts new rocks out every year. But last time I was out, which is 2 years ago, I think, there were not nearly as many rocks as there were the first time I was out, which is about 6 years ago.
Maybe they should put out cameras to track these guys down.
Yeah, yeah. The dunes are magic out there. There's so many shots in so many different directions and so much texture. I can just spend hours out there trying to, never get tired of trying to go out and create just enjoy the shapes that happen out there.
Scott, before you leave Death Valley, just one comment that I would throw in. If you're ever out there, probably a week or two after a significant rainstorm, the area around Badwater, there's as the area floods and then the water evaporates, you get these saline crystals, and almost like the angel hair you would put on your Christmas tree. It's the most magical spot. It's just probably a couple of 100 meters out from the main parking area, and then just sort of keep looking to the right for an opening, and you go into all these little hexagonal areas, and it almost looks like really like cotton batting, the really fine hair, and it's just a magical spot, and nobody knows about it. They just walk right past it.
Yeah, it's down in kind of the cracks between these hexagonal crystals, right? And you
go
down and you look at it, and you say, how does this get here? And you realize that it's the salt water climbing kind of up this crystalline stuff and evaporating off. But
you got to wait for about 2 weeks after a significant rain. I was there probably at the end of October in 2015, and they'd had a really huge flash flood that came through there and just created a godsend for photographers. But again, nobody else was there except me.
Yeah. Cool. Bryce Canyon in the winter. It's cold up there. This I took last winter, and it was 2 degrees. When it warmed up. Of course, that's sort of like Michigan right now, right? But I love the color that was happening out there. Fun place to visit. The snow gives you a different look. Okay, what is this? Why red and blue? Anybody answer that question?
Well, I don't know why, but isn't that what they call alpenglow?
Yeah, it's kind of, this is the alpenglow, but yeah, that a little bit too is what this is. And you can see it in the morning, you see it at night. The light of the setting sun is lighting this up, and this is in your shadow. And that's what that ridge is right there. This has always been a hard thing for me to shoot. I tried to shoot it a couple of times, but finally I did. By But I came out about 11 o'clock. I've always shot it in the summer, but then I didn't shoot anymore because I didn't like what I was getting. And I realized that the sun was shining off here and lighting this up and growing it and causing it to glow in just a magical way. So great place to shoot. This is a multi shot HDR. Then a place to, we live so close to a wonderful place. Don't lose this one. And I count, this is November, so I'm counting it as winter. Under the bridge. This is taken from the bridge. This is the main bridge where they're kicking everybody off. This is the one at the first turn down there, looking out underneath it. This is from the top of that same bridge as this, only looking back the other direction. Court of the Patriarch's Low, where the leaves are gone, you can shoot up into these guys now. You can't get to this spot anymore. They've redone the bank, and you can't get to this position. Observation point. This was taken on November 12th of this year. And you can see there's snow out here. The ground is still warm, and it was a 3-mile slog, 3.5-mile slog in the mud to get out here and take this picture. And I stayed till after sunset and then went back. It's a little dark for the last half. Quite dark for the last half. But well worth it. I've been looking forward to taking this a long time. The color of all the cottonwoods changing in the bottom. And it's a nice color in the sky. And the nice thing about that color in the sky is there's enough cloud cover over here. The indirect lighting of the sun on that lit the sides of the canyon such that this wasn't in deep shadow and this wasn't over bright. It was just really a lucky time to be there. Log Canyon. Don't underestimate that. I love this place to shoot. Even in this is at the end of this is the end of March, I think, if I remember right, at 1st of April, about that time frame. There's still snow up there. The center of the galaxy is starting to become visible. I waited a little late to take this picture because when I first got there, it was about right here, but I messed up my shots. Go to Horseshoe Bend. If you haven't been there before, great place. Antelope Canyon near Page. They used to have photography things. You could go lower Antelope Canyon, take your tripod. Can't do it anymore. However, these were shot handheld. So you can do it. You've got practice holding it steady. Make sure you got a camera with enough dynamic range to make it go, and it actually works. This is Lower Antelope Canyon too. This is called the Rose. How many of you shot Lower Antelope? Shot the canyon?
I've been there.
Been
Yep.
there, yeah. A few of us have been there. I don't think they're open right now because of the COVID. I think all the Navajo
All
land
the
is
Navajo places are shut down. Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
something to look forward to when they open.
Yeah, look forward to when they're open. This is a place that I've been trying. It took me 7 years to get here. This is the second wave, but I'd always wanted to go to the wave. And so I felt about like this when I got up there. I got some more of this is a classic wave structure. Usually you shoot this kind of low, but it had these guys in there and they were having a good time. So I decided to show that one tonight. I want to go again. I've got a couple of ideas I'd like to try. A very interesting place up there. Cathedral Gorge State Park. Now these were not taken in the winter. Anybody who shot the Milky Way can tell they're not Milky Way is the wrong spot for winter. But all of this sort of stuff is, now when you first go out there, the hard thing about shooting out there is there's these wonderful shapes, but there's so many of them, and figuring out how to shoot and isolate it so that you don't get overwhelmed by the shapes that are out there is a bit of a difficult task, but it's worth it. You kind of took me about 3 trips out there playing with it to try and understand what I had, but it's just fascinating to go there because there's so much texture, color in these places. Valley of Fire State Park. This is their fire wave. And this is, the fire wave is down here. You can see a couple of little things down here. Those are people. That's right down here. This is on the other side looking across. There's some hoodoos out here. Before you go down the canyon, this climbing up on top and looking at it from there. Parowan Gap and Canaan Gap. They're both here. One's up by Parowan and one is out here in the, out by Hilldale. And these are amazing to me. They're cut down through that hard surface and the wind is etched out behind them. They're really cool. Late March. If you get there at the right time, the Milky Way is almost lays across it really early in the morning because it's just starting to become visible. If you get it at the right time, it almost looks like it's laying across it. Depending on what lens you do and how close it is, you can be longer and skinnier or this size. And then you wait around a little bit and take sunrise. You and your other 50 or 60 other closest photography friends will be there that morning. It's really popular to go to. It's a really fun shot.
And just to emphasize that, you really need to be there in the middle of the night to get, it's such a small spot that looks under that arch. And of course it's a sunrise shot that really hundreds of your very best photographer friends will be there before you are probably. So when we went there, I think we got there at, well, it was pitch black. I think we were there maybe at 4-ish, 5-ish in the morning, and there were people already with their cameras set up, staking out their spot.
When I got there, I'll go back. I kind of got the same time. And I ended up down here. And because they were stacked too deep up in this part. And I'd been up the day before and I scouted out and I decided that I wanted to be in this area right down in here. And I got there and there was almost no room. And this guy said, come down here, we can squeeze one more in down here. And I got down in there and I was 5 o'clock in the morning. That's 2 hours before sunrise. And so I went down and perched down there. And in my mind, that was exactly the right place to be because the sun at the end of March from that position, almost wherever it comes over there. But it was such that the angles were good. It wasn't up here where the sun had to be so high. Because in order to get this, you want just a little piece of the sun, right? You want it to be really sharp and then you want to be your lens stop down. Otherwise, you're razor wide.
So do people go there all year round to get that shot? Is the sun such that it's good to get that shot all year, or is it a spring shot?
You can go anytime. Now the sun will move from up in here to way down in here, and depending on where you are. It'll show up in different places. But if you're careful, you can shoot this about any time.
Okay.
And one other comment about that. Some of us who are getting older and don't want to trek 3 miles up and down hills, I always like to tell people the places that you go that are just fabulous shots, even though they're very popular, that are pretty easy to get to. This is what would you say, Scott? How many yards from the parking lot? It's very
Oh, less than 100 yards.
less than 100 yards from the parking lot. So most anybody who might not be able or want to trek far can get this shot.
Oh, I was going to mention that on all of these shots. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's really important. Some of these are really hard. Some are really easy. Cathedral Gorge is a very easy place to shoot. There's a little road there, and it's all the way along this couple mile long set of cliffs that's full of all of these things. And you can get out and you walk 50 or 100 feet and you're there. So it's just, and there are more places that this great place.
God, if I could throw in one new suggestion for a place, this is probably not going to be a day trip for most of you folks, but when I come down that way, I usually come down the I-5 all the way down, and the July 1st of 2019, I spent that night at Crater Lake National Park, and when I was at midnight, I was up at the overlook looking down over the lake with the Wizard Island in the foreground. Nothing to disrupt my view except the Milky Way. And it was absolutely spectacular. There was like 3 other people there.
Well, I bet it would be. Yeah, because the first part of July is a wonderful time to shoot Milky Way, given that the moon's in the right phase.
It was cold though, because you're over 8,000 feet up, and it was cold. It was close to freezing, but dress for the weather, but it just plan it. It was just an amazing, it was my best Milky Way experience ever.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. That is a wonderful shot. Okay, now these are close. And I'm going to, some of these are a little, I'll give it to you. I'll talk a little bit about it and go through. I'm going to go through them fast. Canaryville Falls, just right up the road here from St. George. You've got a really nice little slot canyon. These were taken in the winter. I hiked up here in the snow because I wanted to get frozen ice. It wasn't cold enough yet. I didn't get the big ice buildups. But I've done it in summer. Wonderful shot, wonderful place to go. It is about 1.5 miles, and it's a moderate hike. And probably a lot of people know this. This is not a moderate hike. This is a hard hike. It's about 9-mile round trip. And coming back out, you've got about a 500-foot hike up the side of a mountain, and it's a steep, almost a scramble. There's no trail really along the bottom. You just scramble. Sometimes you're walking the river. But the subway is, if you can do it, don't do it by yourself, but if you can do it, it is a wonderful trip. Yant Flats.
Before we go to Yant Flat, I just want to comment on the subway and also Canaryville Falls. Both of those are now permitted hikes.
Yes, they are permitted hikes.
Yeah, you have to get your permit.
Permits for Canaryville Falls, you get right at the bottom of the canyon.
You have to make reservations now.
Do you? Okay.
Yep.
Unless you go this time of year.
Well, online reservations. I check it before you go.
Yeah, what I did is when we went up, I think it was last year, there's nobody there. There's nobody at the gate. There's nobody at the parking lot. There's nothing. It was, I don't think they had, because the trail disappears, and it's tricky this time of year to get there.
That has changed.
Okay, good to know. Yant Flat. Now this is where Washington is, or St. George. And it's right up here. It's about 22 miles. And it has a big section, just all kinds of just interesting formations. This kind of these big, I don't know, big pile of brains that somebody, the giant somewhere.
When he says 22 miles, that's driving to the
That's
trail,
driving, yeah.
yeah,
That's
not walking.
It's about a mile each way walk, and it's fairly flat, but it's still a mile. And it's sand for some of it. But then you get to the edge, you go down in here. That's a little more strenuous, but it's not awful. Little Finland. This is this is Mesquite over here. And you go down here and you drive a long ways. It's longer than the hour and 45 minutes because it's just all dirt road. You can drive right to it. But they have these just strange shapes. And somehow the sandstone has been infused with, I don't know whether it's some sort of calcite or what, but it almost rings like ceramic when you touch it. It's hard, and depending on how it deposits itself in there, it leaves these really strange shapes, like this monster and wing stuff, and it's kind of a fantastical fairyland. But it's don't go by yourself, but there's you can drive, either go down, start at the bottom of a little hill, you climb up, or you can drive to the top of the hill and just walk along the edge. Either way.
And winter is a good time to go because of the fact that it gets pretty warm down there other times of the year.
Yes. Yeah, so this is a great time for that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is Toro Weep Overlook. Kind of 3,000 feet. And you come right over here and look down, and you can probably throw a rock and hit the river. But it's beautiful. I've only been down midday. I would like to be down here with the sun coming up about right over here. I think that'd be just marvelous.
And that's definitely a 4-wheel drive, know what you're doing trip.
But there's no walking.
No,
So,
there's no walking, but it's not an easy walk, not an easy drive in the park to get there.
yeah, not a car. You need a high-performance vehicle.
Just a note on that. When my husband and I did that, of course, it's been several years ago. We drove that whole thing on side by sides down that long dirt road. And just at the very end, there's a gate and a park ranger, and said that we could not drive the side by sides into the park. And so
Really?
well, actually, when I think about that, what we ended up doing, now that I think about that, the time we went there, we trailered our razors part of the way down. And so we ended up, it was so long to get down there. If I remember right, we ended up parking the razors. No, let me think. We might have walked it.
Yeah.
Now I'm confused. I don't remember if we walked it or went back and took our truck for the last little bit that you could take. We took a truck, but what I remember is going all that way and not being able to take our ATVs, to the end.
And that
They may have changed that now, or I don't know, but just, it is such a long way that we were really not upset, but we thought, well, never again, because the ride was way too long.
it's
Yeah, I went like 2 years ago in April and we drove right to the edge out on the Toro Weep Overlook
Well,
on
maybe,
our side by sides.
well, maybe they've changed that. So
You have to be street legal to go in the park is the why they do it at the gate. They're also limiting the crowd control now. The ranger is counting the people down there. And if there's so many that there's not parking spaces, still keep you up there at the ranger station.
And I think the
Which
number's like
gives you a
8.
chance to talk to the ranger, who's a delightful guy.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
still, isn't it like about like 8 vehicles and that's it. It's a very small
Yeah.
number.
Oh,
Very
yeah, it's a
small
very
place.
small parking lot.
Yes, it is.
When I went down, it was actually in Christmas vacation. My son had come down and we decided to go out there, and it was between Christmas and New Year's. And we talked to the ranger. He was out there. He's been, he's been there almost his whole career. He's been there like 17 years or something like that.
He turned down Chief Ranger for Grand Canyon a while back.
Oh,
That's his choice to stay out there.
and he said they had 15,000 people come down there to that place.
Wow.
So I guess the bottom line is on some of these trips that you see the beautiful pictures and we talk about, make sure you know before you go.
Yeah,
That's
and
the way to
I will
stop.
say the sunset there is beautiful. When we
Did-
were there,
Did you see the National Geographic cover last fall, where they got the sunrise picture you were talking about and put it on the cover? They called it Sunset at Torrweed.
Oh.
Scott, if you're to get out to the Torrweep, before you go there, there's a ranger or a visitor center or whatever they call it. I think it's in Fredonia that has responsibility for that whole area. Can they tell you the status, or can you reserve a space that's at that visitor center?
No,
I doubt it.
I
So
don't
it's
know.
basically potluck, first come, first served. Is that the way it works?
Probably. When I was out there, we were the only ones. But
What time of the year?
like December 27th.
I wonder why.
it'll go to a permit system pretty quick, I predict.
Yeah, I think it will. The one thing you do need to be careful of is it's not a place to be when it's wet.
Good point.
It's like a lot of these roads. Don't go up to Yant Flat when it's wet up there.
Yeah.
It has this clay stuff that forms out here that's just slicker than slick. You park sideways stop on a hill. It's got a little bit of canton road, and your vehicle just sort of slowly slides to the edge.
Dolomite.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, dolomite. So,
Okay, we'll let you get back to your presentation.
well, I think we're just about there.
Okay.
Back we are.
We knew that.
You can unmute yourselves now and we can have discussion and questions. And thank you, Scott, very much.
Oh, you're most welcome. I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Good stuff, Scott. Very good.
Very good.
Yeah, I particularly came because I knew some of your work and I just wanted to see more.